Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome from a very unseasonably warm Dublin. Thank you for joining today's public debriefing. Today, we're going to review the outcomes of the 65th berec plenary meeting that took place in St. Julian's on Malta last week. It was the fourth and final plenary of this year, of course. And can we have the next slide, please? And today we want to share updates on 4 key deliverables that will shape berec's work for 2026 and beyond. They are, first of all, the berec work program for 2026 that was adopted, then the berec strategy for 26 until 2030, that was also adopted at the plenary. And then we're going to look at 2 draft reports, one on switching and termination of contracts, and the second is the draft guidelines on geographical surveys under Article 22 of the Code. Each topic is distinct, but together we would like to think that they reflect berec's commitment to transparency, stakeholder engagement, and evidence-based regulation. For today, we will use a tried and tested format for these briefings. So that means that we take the first 2 presentations and then pause for a Q&A. And then we will continue and have the second 2 presentations, and I will also give some general information on the berec publications and upcoming events. And then we will have a second Q&A. But I will now hand over to my successor as berec chair for 2026, Mr. Marko Mišmaš from the Slovenian NRA AKOS, who will present the berec work program for 2026. The berec work program was adopted at the plenary, as I said, and sets berec's operational priorities for the next year, ensuring resources align with the legislative developments and the stakeholder needs. So please, Marko, the floor is yours.
Robert, thank you for the floor. Hello from my side to everybody. So this is my last presentation of the final work program for berec for next year in my role as incoming chair. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere thanks for all of your contributions throughout this year. Next slide, please. So on the left side of the slide, you can see the final number of projects we have planned for next year. So the number is 40. The figure includes 8 projects that will be carried over into the 2026 from the 2025 work program, some of which are guidance on 5G network slicing, for instance, and fact-finding report on competition indicators and regulatory highlights in different jurisdictions. There are also 11 mandatory or recurring projects, such as roaming report, peer review process, and engaging with RSPG or regulatory accounting reports. The figure also covers several items we refer to as DNA placeholders. This was one of the clear input coming from your side. These activities will be led by the Regulatory Framework Working Group, and 4 internal placeholders were created to facilitate exchanges among several expert working groups. In addition, we have identified 16 new and interesting projects, focusing on key emerging issues such as combating fraud, copper switch off in light of the DNA, access conditions to state aid funded networks, and so on. Overall, the number of the project is lower than in recent years. We have to admit that. The main reason is that we want to ensure sufficient resources are available for any input that may be requested or required during the next year's legislative processes. On the right side of the slide, you can see the timeline of the document. The process started with the preparation and publication of the outline and concluded with its adoption at last week's plenary meeting. As you can see, we kept stakeholders informed throughout the entire process. And since BEREC strives for the transparency and close cooperation with the stakeholders, we also offered many opportunities for you to participate. Next slide, please. At this and the next 4 slides, I will present the workload for 2026 by each BEREC plenary cycle. You will see that we have distributed the public consultation throughout the year. That was a clear request coming from you, our stakeholders. In the first quarter of 2026, you can expect public consultations to be launched for 3 documents. And these are: the first one is fact-finding report on competition indicators and regulatory highlights in different jurisdictions. The second one is report on virtual words and Web 4.0. And the third one is BEREC retail and wholesale roaming guidelines. It is also worth noting that we will launch some public consultations today, which will also conclude in 2026. Following suggestions received in previous public consultations to provide longer consultation periods, I can inform you that the updated BEREC guidelines on geographical service and the report on switching and termination of contracts will remain open for more than 4 weeks. A similar approach will be applied in the future, where and whenever possible. Next slide, please. Here is expected workload for plenary 2. In Q2, we will probably finalize also BEREC's feedback to the DNA proposal and potential reflections to the documents related on the review of the EU telecom rules. There is an intention to hold the second BEREC public debriefing in physical form in Brussels. You can also expect public consultations regarding further guidance on the 5G network slicing in Q2 and 3 interesting external workshops to be held on. So the first one is migration of copper switch off in light of the DNA. The second one is practices for ensuring equivalence of access and choice with respect to accessibility. And the last one, the third one, is combating fraud. Following the comments received in the 2026 work program regarding the transparency of the workshops, we will prepare several guidance to be shared and discussed with the working groups. These guidelines will help enhance and ensure the highest level of transparency and efficiency in our workshops. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So, expected workload at P3. Traditionally, the third plenary cycle is a bit heavier. You have usually expect that the next work program will be published for public consultation. We are also planning 2 additional public consultations for reports. Namely, the first one is BEREC report on access conditions to state aid funded networks. And the second one is BEREC report on the competition dynamics of artificial intelligence and the impact on internet openness and end users. 2 workshops are planned as well for the third quarter of 2026. And these are, the first one is on implementation of the EOL by NRAs, which is postponed from 2025. And the second is on understanding digital sufficiency in digital technologies for greener networks and ICTs. And I see that we are already in the P4. Here is the plan for the last quarter, which is again traditionally more demanding. 4 public consultations are planned for the last quarter. And these are, the first one is a report on practices for ensuring equivalence of access and choice with the respect of accessibility. The second one is a report on the application of fair and responsible pricing within the SMP framework. The third one is a report on the sustainable AI for greener digital infrastructures, understanding the environmental implications of the AI in the telecoms and the ICT sector. And the last one is the report on best practices for the resilience. Next slide, please. And here we have a list of the projects that don't have the exact timing or where various contributions are being prepared throughout the full year, sometimes depending on the request or input given by other institutions. Some project deliverables will be carried over into 2027. The exact timelines for this are available in the work program. Next slide, please. So public consultation procedure. In the public consultations procedure, we received 16 submissions. All of them were properly analyzed. Next slide, please. So the general comments from the public consultation, all inputs that we received from the public consultation and our response are as always summarized in the draft BEREC report on the outcome of the public consultation. We are happy that you all showed strong support for the draft 2026 work program, as well as for BEREC's strategic direction and role in the upcoming review of the EU telecom rules. We acknowledged also that the topics of the planned workshops were welcomed. You shared with us many specific comments and proposals on both individual projects and the strategic priorities, and thank you for those as well. All were noted or recognized, and some resulted in the changes of the work program document. However, I need to mention at this point that many comments and proposals given by the stakeholders fall outside BEREC's current competence, and they relate more to potential future changes in the regulatory framework. Next slide, please. After the plenary tree, we added 3 projects, as you can see in the first bullet point. We also adjust a few timelines and made some other minor text updates in the PRDs listed in the second bullet point. For example, we carried out some rewording to better address market impact aspects or modified certain parts for clarity. Some inputs received from public consultation also resulted in deliverables changes. There will be 1 additional external workshop and 1 more document will be submitted for the public consultation in 2026, as you can see in the last bullet point. Next slide, please. And we have come to the end of my presentation. What I can say here is that we plan early start next year. It will be a busy one. This we can surely expect at the moment already. I would like to sincerely thank you, all of you, for your contributions again. And on behalf of BEREC, I can say that we look forward to continued and fruitful cooperation with all of you. Thank you. And Robert, I'm giving you the floor back.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you very much. We will now turn to the co-chairs of the BEREC Planning and Future Trends Working Group. That is Maria Ruiz Merida from CNMC in Spain and Katia Marcantonio from AGECOM in Italy. And they will present the BEREC strategy for 2026 to 2030. This strategy provides the long-term vision, embedding flexibility to respond to emerging technologies and market dynamics. Please, Maria, Katia, go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Robert, for your introduction. As Robert said, we approved the strategy package. Let's start from the outcome of the public consultation. As you know, the consultation ran from the 11th June to the 15th July. Thank you for providing us with 13 very valuable responses. Overall, your feedback was supportive of the strategy, structure, and direction. May I have a next slide, please? Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead with the second slide, please. Please, next slide. Thank you. You provided us with, as I said, you were supportive of the strategy, direction, and structure. However, you also provided us with specific input, which we were happy to take on board. Concerning general remarks, some concerns were expressed for presenting strategic priority 4, that is cybersecurity, sustainability, and resilience as standalone. We understand your concern, but this will not affect the balance amongst the 5 strategic priorities of BEREC. Nor it will undermine the cross-cutting coherence with other priorities. Advancing to markets and technological developments, you asked more specific focus on the role of non-terrestrial networks and to quantum computing, and we inserted a clear reference to non-terrestrial networks' role, after all, in providing resiliency. And we committed to follow the evolution of quantum computing. Advancing to priority 2, connectivity and digital single market, you endorsed our regulatory approach to connectivity developments, and you asked more attention to the role of mobile virtual network operators in providing connectivity for IoT and vehicles, connected vehicles. And even here, we stressed out developments on IoT. Going to priority 2, competition-driven and open digital markets, broad support was expressed for ex-ante regulation to be applied on the basis of principles of flexibility and proportionality. And as you know, this is our commitment since years. We'll continue to apply SMP regulation in a targeted and flexible way. Going to priority 3, empowering end users, for sure, we will support sector-specific rules and a technological neutral approach. Next slide, please. Thank you. Concerning priority 4, the one we singled out, you stressed the importance of this priority, and we confirm that we'll commit to work out common indicators and benchmarks to be adopted in a code for the sustainability of telecom networks. Going to BEREC capabilities, you suggested to expand structured dialogue with you, and we are here to be as effective as possible also in performing this task. Last but not least, institutional and international cooperation, after all, in this period is very, very important, and we stay committed to it at the best of our possibilities. And thank you very much for your attention. I give floor to Maria for the final text of the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. Can I have the next slide, please? Well, good morning, and first of all, thank you very much for all your contributions and helping us to fine-tune the BEREC strategy 2026-2030. As my colleague Katia has explained, we have received a broad support to the draft proposal during the public consultation. So that means that not many substantial changes have been introduced in the text compared to the version published before the summer. As a brief reminder of the main lines of the strategy, it merged 4 different documents: the midterm strategy, the action plan 2030, and the institutional and international strategies that we have to elaborate in line with Article 35 of the BEREC regulation. So the document starts with a mission statement that is similar to the one we had until now, but it includes some adjustments to, on one hand, highlight the forward-looking approach of regulation and focus on both the infrastructure and services dimension. Then the document takes a stock of the market, technical and policy developments taking place in the European Union. And within this framework, 5 strategic priorities are defined considering both the policy objectives set up in Article 3 of the Code that are promoting connectivity on the single market, fostering competition and empowering end users. And complementing those, 2 additional priorities have been added building on the action plan 2030. That are contributing to the environmentally sustainable and secure and resilient digital infrastructures and strengthening BEREC capabilities and continuous improvement. Anticipating maybe one of the frequently asked questions, it is also acknowledged that the strategy may have to be updated in light of the changes that the upcoming legislative review may bring. Can I have the next slide, please? So the changes introduced after the public consultation come on one hand from the contributions that we have received from you. And with in view of this input, we have on one hand underlined further the message of the possible role that non-terrestrial networks may have to reinforce network resilience. And we also made an explicit acknowledging that the BEREC will follow the developments around M2M and IoTs, in particular in the context of permanent roaming. Then we also introduced some updates that come from the policy developments that have taken place since the publication of the draft strategy after plenary 2, like for example, the digital omnibus. And we also had some internal review from our colleagues leading to wording improvements and also some proofreading to improve the readability of the text. But all in all, as said, there were no many substantial changes compared to the version that you already have seen after plenary 2. Can I have the next slide? So this is everything from our side, and we are happy to take all of your questions.
Thank you, Katia. Thank you, Maria. As the slide suggests, we now open the floor for questions. Please feel free to raise points on any topic related to the work program or the BEREC strategy. And once we see the questions coming in, I will hand them to the correct person. So bear with us for a second until I can see your questions. The first one is regarding the work program for 2026. I'm interested in how the topic of end users is represented. So can I hand that question to you, Marco?
Thank you, Robert, for the floor and for the question. So we took inside the work program quite a lot of projects regarding from the field of end users. So first one is berec report on switching and termination of the contract. The second is berec-BEUC joint workshop on the end users' rights. The third one is a workshop on the report on practices for ensuring equivalence of access and choice. So basically this is accessibility. The fourth one is implementation of the Open Internet Regulation and berec Open Internet Guidelines. The fifth is collaboration on Internet Access Service measurement tools. And the sixth one is assessment of the need to review the berec guidelines for quality of service parameters. And I can conclude that the third strategic priority is well presented in the 2026 work program.
Thank you. Indra, do you have anything to add to this?
I can just complement that end user's perspective is also in other documents that are within our work program, and it's not only in Pillar 3, but in other documents that relate to competition and other topics as well.
Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question. Are there any other questions? Giving it a few more moments. Okay. There's nothing at the moment, but there's a second, you can have a second bite of the cherry later on. I would suggest that you gather your thoughts if there are any, and we go on to the next presentation. And then if there are more questions, you can answer it in the Q&A session a bit later. Next, we will turn to the co-chairs of berec's end user working group. You already met Indra Jurgolinine from RRT in Lithuania. I mangled your name, I'm sorry. And the other co-chair is Marina Lubic-Karanovic from HACOM. They will present the draft berec report on switching and termination of contracts. And this draft report on switching of contracts addresses end user rights and the market functioning properly, critical for consumer empowerment and competition. So please, Marina and Indra, go ahead.
Thank you, Robert, for the floor. Next slide, please. To begin with and to start analyzing our draft report, we want to get a bit back and to see what this report is about and what berec has done so far within the topic, what relates to switching and termination of contracts. And if we get back to the recent activities within berec, the first report on terminating contracts and switching providers was published in the year 2019 and analyzed the practices among countries which were related to switching of providers. But given that the adoption of ECC was just finalized, the practices stemmed from earlier practices rather than the ones established by ECC. Later on, we also delved into the switching topic in our workshops that we had a few, which was in the year 2022. joint workshop with berec, which also had a place and a topic on switching in there. The summer report was published in the year 2023. We also had the end users workshop last year, which was the part of our opinion under Article 123 of ECC, which also had a focus of switching practices and some challenges that countries or stakeholders faced. And of course, our recent opinion under Article 123 examined and assessed the end users' rights, how the technological and market developments have affected or might affect the implementation of end users' rights. And part of that opinion also reflects our findings related to switching. Next slide, please. And when we come to this report, the Article 106 in the ECC establishes the principles for switching, which should ensure seamless process. It should be convenient to the end users. It establishes the obligation to cooperate between receiving and transferring providers. It sets some rights granted to the end users, which ensures the timely switching, and some restrictions that wouldn't allow undue delay. And of course, it's indirect impact to competition as well, because the more choice the end users have, the less barriers to competition as well. And given all those aspects, we wanted to not only delve into the Article 106, but also to see how it interplays with other articles of the ECC, namely its Article 105, which establishes rules for termination of contracts, and 107, which establishes rights granted for bundle service contracts. The methodology was, and our assessment was based on the questionnaire that was circulated to NRAs. We received 30 of responses, 25 of EU members and 5 of non-EU members. But this report, we want to underline that it is not an opinion, but the fact finding. We just wanted to understand how this switching works within member states. Next slide, please. So the structure of our report, given the previously mentioned aspects, is divided into 3 major parts. First part basically covers procedural parts. Second, analyzes the main disincentives and challenges that were identified during the switching process within member states. And the third part focuses on particular end users' rights and how they are implemented. The next slide, please. And to begin with the main findings, so we can see that the transposition of Article 106 is finished and completed within all member states. And as we have within the Article 106, 2 processes. It covers number portability and switching of internet access service. And while we have number portability quite for a long time in place, it is quite already the process which is established and working. The switching of internet access services actually varies across the region and across the member states. And at some points and some aspects, we can say that it is only starting to show the real impact and results. And to further guide you with the findings, I pass the floor to my dear colleague Marina.
Thank you, Indra. Next slide, please. So regarding procedural part, the main findings from the data that we received are regarding the scope of services, initiation of the process, verification and consent, provider cooperation, deadlines, delays, and cancellation. We found out that there are different national implementations, especially regarding rejecting portability requests and different treatment of fixed and mobile portability. Also, there are some differences in rights to withdraw in relation to porting and switching providers. Next slide, please. So in the second part, and disincentives that we found out, these are disincentives regarding contractual disincentives, provider and procedure related disincentives, technical factors, and some kind of behavioral factors that discourage switching. Also, we found out that the main reasons for end users not switching are high early termination fees and charges for equipment that is purchased. Also, there is a fear of service disruption during switching, problems with billing, double billing, mostly handset unlocking, and too complicated or too long steps in the switching procedure. Next slide, please. In the third part, end users' rights, you will see that we examine compensation and calculation regarding the switching process and delays in switching. And we also wanted to find out whether the consumers are entitled to claim additional damages. But of course, in majority of countries, these matters fall into the jurisdiction of the courts as it should be. Also, what we found out that, of course, one of the most important competences regarding end users' rights are dispute resolution competence, which is in more than 15 NRAs, which also indirectly encourages switching process. Also, when end users face service loss during switching more than one day, it is basically because of the technical nature. Regarding the questions about phase out legacy technologies, we found out that most NRAs, they do not have any hard law, but that some of them have specific guidelines. Next slide, please. Even though, as my colleague said, this is a fact-finding document and we are not giving any berec opinion, but we saw some areas that we wanted to highlight, maybe for the future work and also for the Commission, of course. There are some problems that we identified regarding bundle services. So we found out that when ending bundle services, that there is a loss of discounts, conclusion of a new contracts with a new duration, new price, and there is no right to terminate the contract without penalty in some cases, which you will see while reading the document. Also, there is a problem in in-vehicle connectivity and switching, and we found out basically that there is no dedicated process. We have default provider chosen by the car manufacturer, which created lock-in effect. Also, a problem is identified regarding in-contract indexation price increase. And there is agreement among berec NRAs that this can cause problems in switching process. And there are conditions that differ among member states, which raised doubts in relation to objectives of the ECC regarding high users protection, because they create legal uncertainty, and also end users are always weaker side in relation to operators. Next slide, please. So you have a chance to see our draft report and give your input. So we'll put our report on public consultation for about 6 weeks. So you as a stakeholders are invited to give your input by January 20. You will see at the BEREC website. And we tend to adopt this document next year in June 2026 on the plenary too. So thank you for your attention, and we are happy to receive any of your questions. And now I'm giving the floor to our colleagues from Remedy and Market Monitoring Working Group, Annegret and Marco. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marina. Okay, I will present on behalf of the group another public consultation, which is on the guidelines, on the updated guidelines, better guidelines on geographical surveys of network deployments. Next slide, please. And when we are, let's say, talking about geographical surveys, we are talking about an obligation which is an obligation for NRAs or other competent authorities, which is set in the code. And at Article 22, which is, let's say, describes this kind of obligation as a survey of the reach of electronic communication networks capable of delivering broadband. And the article also states that NRAs have to update this survey at least every 3 years in order to have updated and reliable georeferencing of indicators, georeferencing of indicators, and it is leave to the discretionary powers of an array as an option to also map the forecasts, the near future of the reach of VHCN. This is in terms of the description of the obligation in terms of background. In terms of goals, purposes of these studies, first of all the tasks related to the, let's say, full sets of aims and objectives of the code, but also these surveys are playing a role for the application of state aid. And the role for BEREC in this process is to issue guidelines in order to assist NRAs on the consistent implementation of their obligation under Article 22. Next slide, please. BEREC released a set of guidelines between 2020 and 2021, so just after the implementation period of the code, and the 3 guidelines make a sort of handbook for let's say geographical surveys. And in 2024, the last year, we worked on an implementation report on the application, on the use, on the utility of these better guidelines in helping NRAs in conducting geographical studies of network deployment. And our main conclusion was that it is appropriate to, let's say, update the core guidelines, which is the first one, in order to take into account the findings, the main findings of the implementation report, but also to take into account soft laws that occurred, for instance, other guidelines from BEREC, and also technology developments that occurred since 2020. Next slide, please. Okay, so the our proposal for the public consultation is a sort of light maintenance of the core guidelines. So we propose to amend strictly when needed the original text. And you will see also that the document that we put under public consultation is in track change modes. So in order that stakeholders can have a clear look, a clear vision of what's this of the proposal of the main changes. And the reasons for this light maintenance proposal is that the core guidelines overall have contributed to a substantial increasing number of geographical studies across Europe, which are good for operators, stakeholders, and also final consumers. And they contribute to improve their granularity, quantity, and breadth of information retrieved and comparability. And the report, the implementation report concluded that there is room in any case for improvement regarding the approaches to implement the guidelines to achieve further harmonization, and with this increase the comparability across member states. So harmonization, reliability of data that have to be mapped, and comparability among member states are the key guidelines, the key, let's say, goals of our activity. Next slide, please. I will, let's say, introduce in a very, very brief way the list of the main changes that are under public consultation. Let's start from a new indicator that we propose as an option for NRAs, which is we can call it premises activated. So we all knows that these geographical studies starts from, let's say, the description of networks, which is mainly the supply feature of national networks, broadband networks, and we would like to introduce an optional indicator which is, let's say, moving from the mere supply also to the take-up of the new networks. And as a second change, moving, let's say, to something closer to, let's say, technology descriptions, we notices that there was a list of speeds that NRAs have to cover and to describe in their geographical surveys, but some speeds in terms of achievable performance of the network, some now we propose to declare it optional for fixed broadband, because we saw from our implementation report that in some cases speed indicators are unavailable, or they are not, let's say, so reliable. They have a limited use, for instance, in terms of peak time speeds or the maximum upload speeds. But we also consider that in some cases, and especially for the application of the state aid law, these indicators can be indispensable, and so we leave it to the discretion of NRAs to populate or not this, to request first of all, and to, let's say, to monitor and to report or not in mapping these speeds. But the rationale was, okay, if there is a limited use, probably there is an issue of availability and reliability of the data, which is important in order to give a tool, a useful tool to all the stakeholders. And in terms of technology description, we gave a little bit more room to the description of FWA networks. Let's say opening the possibility to describe the capacity and the expected performance of this network when declaring FWA coverage, since fixed wireless access networks are playing a role in some countries, not only in complementing VHCN, but also in competing in some cases with them. Again, on technology, there is a list of technologies that operators have to, let's say, declare, and we have a lot of labels, and we let's say still give high degrees of freedom in technology description, but we are trying to avoid a sort of a black box, that is to say the usage of a residual other category, non-classified technology, that it would be not so easy to understand and compare from member state to member states. Then there is an internal link to the update of berec VHCN guidelines, which is important also to let's say give the idea that berec guidelines of course are consistent one with the other. And the next slide for the other changes. Okay, an important technical point that for sure will receive attention from stakeholders is the fact that we introduced guidance on the use of a cell edge coverage as an alternative, reasonable approach to the cell area coverage, of course, in order to assess that a grid is passed with a mobile technology. So we are focusing on the mobile technologies. And of course, our effort was to give a clear and let's say easy to use let's say ratio between the parameters assessing coverage when you are using cell edge probability and when you are using cell area probability of coverage, knowing that of course these indicators are not described in the same quality with the same parameters and the same let's say probability, final probability. We open also and leave it optional to describe the quality of indoor coverage, at least for large surface, commercial surface or something like this, which for some member states are important. And we also introduce a reference to verification guidelines, so which are the second and the third guideline in the core guidelines. As I told you at the beginning, since we had three guidelines that were split in, let's say, a couple of years of approval from berec, now we try to, let's say, make it them talk in order to strengthen the message that broadband maps need to be verified, which is important, and that the reliability requirements promotes also the consistencies with other ways of, let's say, testing quality of the expected delivery of networks, in this case, quality of service 2 tests, especially for mobile broadband. And last but not least, there is a table which lists all the speed classes from the lowest one to the most, let's say, performance. We propose no updates in the text, but we leave it open to the consultation with an explicit question to stakeholders about the need to update in case the speed classes and eventually reproportionate speed limits. Well, next slide, which is the final one. So in terms of procedural aspects of after having described the main changes that we are proposing on FIVA consultation, is that we considered timely to launch this public consultation, even if we are aware that there is another piece of work which is currently under, let's say, attention by the European Commission, but also by BEREC as a discussant, as a privileged stakeholder of this work, which is the updates or the launch of the methodology on 5G mobile and fixed quality of service coverage mapping. So a specific methodology that the European Commission is working on 5G quality. We now are consulting on the document, being aware that this output by the Commission may arrive during the consultation period. For this reason, we prolonged the consultation period up to 60 days with a final deadline for submitting contributions, which is now set in the 9th of February. And we will adopt the final, let's say, guidelines, updated guidelines in P2 2026. And being aware that there is this parallel common work, we can update the mobile broadband part in the light of the forthcoming European Commission methodology on 5G mobile and fixed, but mail on mobile quality of service coverage mapping at the end of the consultation period and before the adoption at the second plenary of 2026. It's all for now, and hope there will be a good response by different stakeholders according to their point of views. And I will give back now the floor to Robert for the final conclusion of the public debriefing. Thanks.
Thank you, Marco. And can I just give a quick shout out to Begoña García Marinoso from CNMC in Spain, who helped both of the co-chairs a great deal in this particular project. So thank you all co-chairs, and I will now give some updates of recent events and some other documents to be published today or in the near future. So can I have the next slide, please? On October 23rd last, I had the distinct honor to welcome Executive Vice President Mrs. Virkkunen at her visit to the BEREC office in Riga. We spoke specifically about the support that BEREC office provides to BEREC, and more broadly, I think the role that BEREC can play in shaping and supporting the EU's digital future. This was the first time that a commissioner visited BEREC office, so for us this was a highly memorable event. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, I would like you to mark your calendars for the BEREC public workshop on migration and copper switch off, which will take place in the first quarter in 2026. The date has not been locked down, so it will still be. I still have to be a bit vague, but keep an eye out for the precise date that we will publish soonish. We will have a similar debrief on Thursday, the 19th of March, after the next BEREC plenary. So again, It will then be my colleague Marco Mishmash who will be sitting in this chair, but please mark in your calendar Thursday, the 19th of March. And then something that is, I think, very important, and that is that the annual BEREC Stakeholder Forum will take place in Brussels on Tuesday, the 31st of March. Please mark that in your calendar. And I can tell you that Mrs. Virkkunen, the Executive Vice President, has agreed to give the keynote address. So mark that in your calendar. Next slide, please. A quick recap on the currently open public consultations. We already mentioned those, but the consultation on the draft report on switching and termination of contracts and guidelines is open until the 20th of January. And then the consultation on the guidelines on geographical surveys of network deployment under Article 22 of the Code is open until February 9th. Your input is essential, and as you can see, and as we announced, we gave a slightly longer period so that hopefully with the festivities in December, you are still able to give us your feedback. The next slide, please. Also published today are a number of other documents. First of all, the BEREC Regulatory Accounting and Practice Report for 2025, which is the 21st edition of this particular publication. It predates BEREC, and it's the oldest document that we keep updating. Then BEREC's summary report on the external workshop on environmental footprint of satellite constellations will be published. And the third document, BEREC's report on domestic submarine cable connectivity in Europe. Finally, we will be publishing BEREC guidelines on very high capacity networks. That's the report that Marco just alluded to. Finally, we will shortly publish a call for inputs, on 5G slicing on BEREC channels. We expect to publish next week on the 16th or 17th of December, with a deadline for inputs on the 6th of February. This is to be confirmed, but this is what I'm expecting to happen. And secondly, we will shortly publish an external study on data centers, which we are currently finalizing with our consultants. Next slide, please. So we're back to an earlier point. We will now open the floor again for any questions you may have on any of the topics addressed. The floor is open, and the first question that we got is the following: will the fact-finding document on service provider switching be followed by a proposal for regulation in 2026? In other words, on the right to switch the subscription in IoT, for example, the connected cars we mentioned. Can I hand back to the co-chairs of the end user working group, Indra and Marina?
Thank you, Robert. To reply to this comment, we just want to underline a few things. One, that as we said, it is a fact-finding report, not some recommendations or guidelines. That is one thing. The second thing is that in our opinion, which was adopted under Article 123 of ECC, basically we already considered this as an aspect to consider in further improvements for the regulatory framework. That is one thing. Afterwards, we had a few interactions with European Commission. And also, if you recall, during the first session, our incoming chair, Marco, mentioned that there are a few topics in our work program which are called ad hoc activities, and we expect more interactions with our stakeholders and European Commission when we will see what are the proposals related to changes in the regulatory framework, and hopefully this question might also be discussed during those interactions. However, for the next year's program, explicitly, not such kind of PRD which would result in formal recommendations on switching is not foreseen. But as we said, we are always taking into account those findings to support our discussion points and have justifications for our positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Indra. I see another question is coming, so I'm just waiting for a second until that hits my screen. In the meantime, we can probably, you can probably show the next slide, please. Just so you can see all the ways you can get in touch with us or keep abreast of what we are doing in BEREC. The next question is, what kind of cooperation will BEREC have with the European Commission regarding the implementation of GIA? Thank you. Well, perhaps the best way to do this is to give this to the relevant co-chairs who are dealing with this. And Annegret, I know you are online. Could you take this question for us, please?
Yes, what kind of? Yes, I mean, you mean for the GIA? Okay, because yes, I think the fixed network working group chairs are not here. So yes, I'll open my camera. So the cooperation there is that in this case, the Commission is due to come up with some guidance and in collaboration with BEREC. And so we have submitted and published now the final guidelines on Article 6 and Article 11, if I'm not mistaken, plus the update of the very high capacity network guidelines, which we took into account also in the Article 22 guidelines. And now we are waiting for guidance from the Commission side, where we know that the Commission is working on. We are not 100% sure about the timing. And on the point that Marco was raising, the methodology, this is something where we also know that the Commission is working hard on it, and we are waiting for this, of course. It's done in parallel, and the idea is then, if it comes by the end of our consultation, that we can still take it into account so that there is not the need to update again the article, the geo survey guidelines. That is our planning here.
Thank you very much, Annegret, and sorry for putting you on the spot like this.
No problem. I managed, I hope.
Yeah. Anyway, just to recap, we've produced 2 sets of guidelines on this topic in Q3, and we are due to work closely with the European Commission to produce that guidance under Article 3 of the GIA. But the European Commission is leading here, so we're dependent on them coming to us. Right. I don't see any more questions. I'm just checking. No, I don't. So that means that this concludes today's debriefing session. I want to thank you for tuning in today, and let me wish you all a very happy Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Of course, I'd like to thank all the co-chairs present here today, but also all the other co-chairs who have worked tirelessly to produce all the documents that were discussed and adopted at the plenary. We will gather again, as I said, on the 19th of March under the chairmanship of Marco Mischmasch. And with that, I want to say bye-bye and see you next time.